make people look good, make your boss look good, make your clients look good, make them look like a winner to the higher ups. Figure out how you can do that. Like you said, take your eyes off yourself. And again, it's the success chases you. I'm not doing this to try and be successful and make a ton of money. I'm doing this to bring value.
I'm Ken Newhouse. Building a profitable business isn't only about generating leads and driving sales. It's about who we are and what we're made of. It's about finding the most effective methods to persuade, inspire, and ignite the imagination of others so you can succeed in business. If you're a member of the new breed of entrepreneur, I invite you to join the quest as we reveal the newest and most effective methods you can use to get clients now. Therese Allison. My guest during today's conversation is a healthy dose of Reese Witherspoon from Legally Blonde. Combine that with a cup of Sandra Bullock from Miss Congeniality, and last but not least, a tablespoon of Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy. Allison is a woman who's achieved massive success in business, primarily sales, in a world dominated by men. And while her book, Playing for Keeps, How a 21st Century Businesswoman Beat the Boys, was primarily written for women, I realized that after reading it that the lessons it contained were worth sharing with my entire audience. So no matter your gender, male or female, today's conversation reveals several powerful lessons you can use to get clients now, generate more and bigger sales, and make your business more profitable than ever. Allison started her career in the insurance brokerage field in 1987, and in the 1990s, she became a partner of McKenna & Associates, a firm with close ties to Lloyd's of London. Aon Corporation bought McKenna & Associates in 1998, and that's when Allison became an executive vice president for Aon's national healthcare practice. She received a bachelor's degree from California Polytechnic State University, and in 2004, Allison retired to stay home with her 3 children. She currently lives in Huntington Beach, California. So if you're ready for an exciting, value-packed conversation, let's welcome Therese Allison onto the show. So Therese, on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show today. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I'm absolutely very, very delighted to have you on the show today. Now, just for the sake of the person listening right now, you live in an area where I think I lived very, very close to where you live now, or within just a few miles. You're in Southern Cal somewhere, right?
I am in Huntington Beach.
Got it. That's where I used to live.
You lived in Huntington Beach?
It was Los Caballeros. I think maybe that's Fountain Valley. You know Los Caballeros is?
Okay. They have a tennis club there. Mm-hmm.
That's where I actually learned how to play tennis. And my condo was on the 3rd floor, and it just so happens that it was over center court. And every morning at like 7:30 in the morning, this guy named Dan was out giving tennis lessons, and I would sit and have a cup of coffee and watch him. And one day he was complaining about his back. And so me being young and energetic, I yelled down and I'm like, hey, I'm a chiropractor and I want to learn how to play tennis. I'll trade you. I never met the guy. And I just like off my porch, I'm like, hey, I'll trade you chiropractic care for tennis lessons. He's like, let's talk. So I ended up getting tennis lessons 3 days a week for about a year and a half from the head tennis pro. Let's do this. Take about a minute or two. My listener, I'm on a guest, may not know that much about you. Take a minute or two. Give us your backstory. You've got a prolific backstory. So if you could encapsulate that in from your earliest like big success to kind of where you are now and bring us up to speed so we can start the conversation off in the right direction.
Sure. So I ended up coming out of college, and my business was corporate fitness, or a PE major. And so I got a job at a hospital. They put me in for sales. I had no idea what to do for sales. So I was all of 24 at the time. And they sent me back to Minneapolis, and it was a program called Stay Well. And they trained me for a week, which was the best thing I've ever done. Taught me the basics about selling. And then I was kind of sent out there just to sell wellness programs to corporations, which you can imagine when you're selling an intangible and you're asking these CEOs to buy something up front for thousands of dollars to try and guarantee on the back end that we're going to lower their healthcare costs. It was a tough one. And so the sales cycle for that was like 18 months to 24 months. And, being young at this age, being a woman in the business, kind of like, I'm thinking that everything kind of works the way it did in sports. I focused, I competed, and, I did well. And not quite as well, but I finally ended up landing a big school district. And the broker there, after about a year, said, hey, we're expanding. We want to hire a broker. We want you to come with us. And so I said, sure. And then went to work with them. and literally was kicked on the streets to build a book of business. And so during that time, I also followed my mentor around, and he worked with school districts. That's all he did. So I learned everything I could, and then I applied that to how I was trying to get clients, landed a big medical group, and then decided to work in that niche. And that pretty much set me on my track for being successful. So that was in late 80s. And in the 90s, I was building the book, and I was then hired away to go work with a company that they were offering a partnership. And so I, of course, went, and our business took off exponentially because it was a niche. And we brought together different products in insurance for medical groups. We had stop loss, medical malpractice, and employee benefits. And I was the benefits arm. And then we sold our company in 1998 to Aon, worked a 5-year contract. And after that, I just decided I had 3 kids. I'm going to stay home and take care of my kids. After a few years, my son, who's now 27, came to me and said, "Mom, I want to know your story." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had to go on a trip to see a previous client, and it was about a 10-hour round trip. And I wrote my story, and it was 10 pages, excessively boring. Except for the last page was, I thought, I'm going to tell my son, here are the lessons learned. Here's the cheat sheet. So forget all the rest, but just if you do this, you'll be successful. And so I did that for him. He went to UCLA. He pinned it above his desk, unbeknownst to me. And I went up there and saw that. And I thought, wow, okay. It's a 6'5" kid, following these lessons learned. I'm like, okay. So he graduates, and I continue to mentor him with those I call them pearls of wisdom. And for 4 years, I am mentoring him a lot. And all I told him was, okay, I just want you to get the title of principal. We're not worried about income at this point, right? So he was like 25, 26. We just were working towards this goal. And at 27, he became one of the youngest principals in a multi-billion-dollar company headquartered in New York.
Nice. Talking about children in our childhood, what's your earliest memory of like a childhood ambition? Where were you in life, or what point in life were you when you first had this idea of, hey, I want to achieve this, or I want to do this? The whole premise of your book is how women can, 21st century women can beat the boys, so to speak. But to kind of set the stage for that conversation, when's your first memory of being really ambitious to achieve something?
Well, I can see the vision. It was on the blacktop at my elementary school, and it was after school sports. And so I was playing kickballs with the boys, and my one goal was I just wanted to be the first one picked. That was it. I knew that as a girl, I was a winner if I was the first one picked. It was just very easy. So at that point, I was kind of used to just mixing in with the boys, and they respected me. I respected them. And that was just the mindset that I had going forward.
So as it relates to business then, okay, so that deals with just life in general, but as it relates to business, what's your earliest lifetime memory? Like the earliest point in your life where you're like, I want to achieve this thing in business. I want to do something special.
Well, I got to tell you, honestly, Ken, I didn't know what I could achieve. So as a girl, I knew that I could win in sports, right? So all I knew was that I wasn't going to try and go after success. I was going to go after being valuable. And as I was valuable, as I started to go through working and whatnot, success chased me. So it was just, I just had my head to the grindstone. I worked at a restaurant during college, put my way through. And after 6 months, they asked me to manage the place. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That'll look good on my resume. It was one of those, the success chased me kind of thing. And then I never even thought about becoming a partner. I was like, I just really want to win, and money's great. And then when they asked me to go into that, I was like, oh, cool. Okay. And so for me, it was about winning. It was about providing value wherever I was. And then things worked out.
Where do you think you learned that lesson about providing value, like that being inherently your goal and not, the success, obviously, if I understand what you're saying here, the success is going to follow if you focus on delivering value first. And I think you pointed that out in the book actually quite well. Where do you think that comes from? Where did you learn that?
Well, I will tell you it's the core of everything that I have done is authenticity. So I came out of college and I was 26. I was blonde and I literally wore glasses to try and look smart. And I realized that as time went on, the more I was myself, the more successful I became. And the value of bringing yourself to the table is people can trust you. They're more apt to give you their business if they know that they're dealing with someone that's authentic. And so mine went as far as, I have a very smart side and then I have kind of a I Love Lucy side. And I just, like I do in my personal life, I would just share my little escapades that would happen to me as I was traveling around, and the CEOs would just laugh. And the value I brought was just I'm smart. I can help you figure out a solution. I can come up with something that will be innovative with Lloyd's of London. At the same time, I'm down to earth and relatable, and we can laugh about this, and then you're going to tell me about your stuff. And so that's the way I was in the restaurant. That's how it was my MO. So authenticity was a big deal. And I actually call it Be True to You in the book. So that's a big deal. And then the other thing that I think is a big deal is, people do business with people I like, and it's all tied in. You need to be likable. What you bring to the table is being likable, and once again, them knowing that you're just, the pearls of wisdom that I have in the book, a lot of those tie back into bringing value. And one of them is own up to your mistakes and fall on your sword when you have to. Come up with a solution. I had landed a large medical group, and they were kind of the springboard for my career. And I got a rate, and I interpreted it wrong, and I presented it to the CEO. They went to the board. They're going to take my thing. And I realized like 3 days later that I interpreted the rate wrong. It was huge because they were big. And so I thought, what am I going to do? Okay, well, what I would normally do authentically is I would just go in and fall on my sword, and I'm just going to take the consequences. You're going to fire me? Okay. And so I went in, I sat in this big imposing office, and I explained to the CEO, and I sat there just kind of shrinking down like, okay, go ahead, fire me. And he says, after 30 seconds, he says, well, Teresa, everyone makes mistakes, but since you handled this the way you've handled it, you're going to keep my business.
Teresa, you speak of, not to interrupt, but you speak of being authentic, and that's very antithetical, number one, to the place you live. Because I lived in California. My wife, the beautiful and talented Lisa, is from California. I've been there many times. I lived there for not all that long, like 3.5 years. But authenticity is not really synonymous with, hey, I'm from California. But it's also not synonymous, unfortunately, with a lot of people that are in sales. And that's one of the things that you're really good at, that you focused on, that you had to get good at, was at sales. Why do you think, first of all, are you from California? And if not, and if you are, what do you think helped you become like such an authentic person, as opposed to, and I don't mean to belittle, because I have a lot of good friends in California, and I have a lot of people that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. But, you have Hollywood, and everybody's got an angle, so to speak. What is it about you? Is it because you're from somewhere else, or the way you were brought up, that helps you to become a genuinely authentic, real person?
Well, I guess I would say, if I were to say one thing, I have deep roots in California. So the California of today does not really represent me and my heritage. So, I can't, my great-great-grandparents came over, and they crossed the plains 3 times, and they came to California in the gold rush. And then my great-great-grandparents, they were partners with and relative to, Governor Waterman, who stood next to Abraham Lincoln. And so there were, and then my grandfather worked, and some people may not know who he is. I'm not sure if they do, but William Mulholland brought water into Southern California. Of course, there's a lot of stuff written about him as a very famous civil engineer. My grandfather raced against him to bring an international aqueduct into LA. So we were down to earth, I just come from a long line of entrepreneur pioneers, and we are what we are. We're looking how to make things better. We're looking how to make a buck. My grandfather, the way they explained him was they put him out. He was the deal maker because people loved him. Like he was the front guy. He was the front guy for all the big investors in California, and in water and water resources. So I would say I am the typical Californian, but I'm not the typical Californian for today.
For today. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair way to say that, because it certainly has. When I was there in the early 90s, it was, I grew up in the Midwest. It was a shock to me. Everybody had an angle. When I say everybody, obviously not every single person, but today, I just know it's so much worse because my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and her husband just moved over to Nevada, I guess for the tax purposes and everything else. But anyway, having said that, so you wrote this amazing book. What was the impetus? What lit the fire? I know you mentioned that you made that list for your son. Was there something else, or was that the fire that said, hey, you know what? I got something here. I'm going to write a book.
That was the final thing that said, oh my gosh, okay, I realized that all my ancestors did these things and they were big people. And then I did these things and I was a woman that succeeded, and then my son. So I thought, yeah, it's time to write the book. But what started it was my father in 1992 started to research our heritage. And he started to uncover some of the things that I talked about. And I promised him before he passed away that I would write the book on the Allisons. And so this is a hybrid of a book on my heritage and the Allisons and my success as a woman in the business world.
Yeah, there's a lot of different unique stories in there that are fascinating. I think a lot of us, if we would actually invest the time to do the research on our backstory, on our heritage, so to speak, our family tree, I think we would be surprised at some of the things we would find out. It turns out that the pastor I used to have in my church, he actually died suddenly about a year and a half ago of a heart attack. My age, just literally one night I'm talking to him, the next day, gone. And that day before he died, he preached another person's funeral. So tell you about how weird life can be. At 53, He just dropped dead. But his family, he had relatives that were on the Mayflower that first came over. He traced it all the way back. Yeah, I thought that he was always very proud of that. Not in a boastful way, but he just thought it was kind of neat. But anyway, so you give a lot of great advice in the book. A lot of different stories, a lot of pearls, as you talk about in the book, pearls of wisdom. But what I'd like to know is, who's your mentor now, or who's been the best mentor you've ever had? Who's the mentor now, or the best mentor you've ever had, or do you still have a mentor? Because you give do you do a lot of mentoring, so to speak, in the book by sharing some of those life lessons and valuable insights? Is there an individual that you would say is your primary mentor, or someone who's been the best mentor you've ever had?
That's such a good question, and makes me think. I mean, I think it's a combination of answers, but I got out of the business in 2004. So prior to that, it would be Jerry Sullivan and Frank McKenna. They were brilliant brokers with Lloyd's of London, and I was in the inner sanctum of insurance, having no idea and no clue that I was there at that time. But I was learning from world-class insurance brokers, and so they were the ones that really, I kind of molded me. And then in 2004, when I got out of the business, I have to tell you that my biggest, and I do write in the book some mentoring pieces about kids and how to deal with kind of stuff that they go through. And my biggest teachers have been my kids and what has gone on and how we've worked together to work through things. The product of the book when it comes to children and mentoring that really were my kids that taught me. So today, I don't really have anyone per se today that is mentoring me. I have found that it's funny because it's just kind of you land in something. It's and people they just want to know, what is it? What made you successful? How can you mentor us? Whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard anybody mention their kids, but I guess life lessons that you learn not only by parenting, but also, I guess when they get to a certain age, they become, at least with my kids, and I've seen that with some of my friends, they're, you let them go, but still, they don't go too far away. They still bounce ideas off of you. And at the same time, they become more like, really good friends.
They do. And what's interesting, as soon as my son became a principal, mentoring stopped. And now when we talk, we're like we're like colleagues. Now I'm like, I just want to hear what you're doing. What's strategic thing? What's the future of what you're planning? And maybe that's kind of, I look to that and it gives me information about what's happening today.
So as it relates to success, if my listener were to ask you a question relative to being successful, which would you say is more important, ambition or talent?
For me, it was talent. For me, I was able to, I was a quick learner. I could, come up with innovative ideas and whatever. And then I also had that driving kind of sports thing, which I would say would be ambitious, but you can't get anywhere unless you're going to be able to deliver the goods. Like for me, that was just my own experience.
So what would you say then to a person because I know I listened to the book called Mindset, and I forgot who wrote it, but it's an awesome book. It's a gal who wrote it. She's a PhD on mindset and talked about having a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And the person with the fixed mindset are the people who ran like Enron into the ground. And Lee Iacocca, they look at it and say, I have this inherent talent. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. They would say, I have this inherent talent, so therefore I'm better than other people, or this is why I'm successful, because I have this inherent talent that other people don't have. But when we talk about talent versus ambition, you can acquire talent. Yes, I want to make sure people understand this. If you don't have this talent, you can acquire. It's like selling, which is going to lead into one of the things I want to talk about in just a second. You did very well with that. I mean, like setting records of all kinds. But talent can be acquired, correct?
Yes, it can. However, now remember, I was in a moving niche with managed care at the time of the 90s. And so you had, things were changing. They were in shift. And what I say is when there's chaos, there's opportunity. So I have to have that innate ability to solve problems. I wasn't just a salesperson per se. I was a hybrid. I was a technical producer, I would say. And in the case of my partners and myself, we were more visionary technical producers because we would see the train coming down the track and how it's going to change and shift. And then we would figure out how to bring an insurance product or something within the insurance niche to solve a problem. And once we solved that problem, we took off because we worked that niche and we were the expert.
All right, I want to ask this next question. And the reason I want to ask it is because I just got off the phone with a personal friend of mine. And he said, he's a dentist. And he said, I don't want to do that. I'm like, Eric, you need to actually give your patients options. If you want more cosmetic dentist patients, you have to tell them what's available. And he goes, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to sound salesy. I don't want to sound like a salesman. And what I tried to impress upon him, and I didn't get there, not yet, is that in order to be successful at anything, especially in business, whether you're a career person who works for someone else or whether you own your own business, you got to be really successful. You have to develop the ability to sell, whether it's enterprise sales, which are very, very complicated. And to me, actually, the more I think about that, it's exciting to me. I don't really do enterprise sales because I sell more to individuals, but I almost would like the challenge of doing that. But I want to get your thoughts on that with respect to selling, the ability to sell. And I don't mean to come in and schmooze somebody and be a fast talker. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about selling as a very sophisticated, very high level skill set that you learn and develop over time. What role does that play in the success of an individual, especially women in today's business place, no matter if they're an employee or the employer or the business owner? How important is it to their success that they be able to sell?
Oh, I think we sell ourselves every day. I mean, I think that, even if you're not a salesperson, and I tell Michael, how you put yourself forth to your coworkers, to your bosses will have an impact on your future. I think in terms of sales, people are afraid of sales. What they have to understand is it's really a delivery issue. Like, how do you deliver that message? So that dentist may have in their mindset that, oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like I'm making a pitch. Well, if you deliver it in terms of, okay, so you know what? I just want you to know these options totally available to you if you want them, blah, blah, blah. I just want to make sure I do diligence and give that to you. You leave that with them. And next time when they come in, they'll probably ask you a question and you just it's a soft sale. So I don't believe you have to be salesy in sales because that was not my MO. I think the more successful people are the least salesy in sales.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to tell them. And our call was cut short because I had the interview with you, but stop thinking about yourself. Think about the person you're serving and what would benefit them. Get your eyes off yourself.
Yes.
And what you want, and start focusing on what they want and what's going to benefit them, and give them the options, and don't sound like a used car salesman. And you're not being salesy, you're serving them.
Yes.
You have a responsibility to do that. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I know you've achieved a lot.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I actually have said, and I posted a few weeks back, and it's once you realize that your business success is not all about you, quote unquote, the world will fall in sync at your feet. So what that says is it's not about you. It's about make people look good, make your boss look good, make your clients look good, make them look like a winner to the higher ups. Figure out how you can do that. Like you said, take your eyes off yourself. And again, it's the success chases you. I'm not doing this to try and be successful and make a ton of money. I'm doing this to bring value. And at the end of the day, you're going to be, I'm like, oh, okay. It's that same thing. So definitely the eyes off of you is a big one.
So then again, if someone's going to keep their eyes off of themselves, and I want to kind of dive back, kind of do a 180, and come back around and talk a little bit more and focus a little bit more about the theme in the book. How women, and yes, most of my listeners are men, but I think there are a lot of lessons in the book that men can learn that I learned as well. Some of them that I knew, I'll be fair and be quite honest, some of them I knew, but you stirred up my mind and brought them back to the forefront of my mind like I wasn't applying them. Several others I didn't really know, and I was very, very appreciative for that. But as it relates to women specifically, what would you say is the biggest challenge? I mean, and I have to assume that it's changed since you were really in the corporate setting, or maybe in the business setting, or maybe it hasn't. What is the number one challenge facing a woman in business today as it relates to being successful in a world that is still dominated by men?
Well, I think that historically, and even now, I think that when women are in really successful positions, people expect them to be like tough. And when I say tough, just there's not necessarily a soft side to them. And I'll tell you, in my own experience, I always said that my signature was the velvet glove. And I felt that as being a woman, being able to have opposing traits helped me to be able to maneuver in any given situation. And my goal was always to take the egos out of the room, right? So I'm working with men, and if I'm the only woman, I'm taking my ego out too. Egos out. Now let's talk business. But I think as a woman, being feminine but firm. So we're not men in business. I never tried to be like a man in business. So I was like, here, my femininity, I'm going to wear my pearls. I'm going to wear my, feminine colors and whatever. At the end of the day, I can go toe to toe with you to negotiate, right? So that's the firm part. It's the graceful but strong. It's the just a velvet glove. The velvet part is the soft part. The glove is the strong part. And as women, when you learn to focus on that and master that, as I would say, you're going to have it all. That's just the way I feel. I just feel that we can maneuver in any situation with that.
What do you think your 20-year-old self would say to you now if you could talk to her, if she could see all that you've done and all that you've achieved and all the people that you've helped? What do you think she'd say to you?
That's such a good question, Ken. I think that she would say, well done. It was great. The best thing that happened with you was you were able to balance your career with having children that became self-sustaining, good people.
That's what I was looking for. So you've had your kids. Your kids are, except for the 15-year-old. I have a 17-year-old as my youngest. What ambitions do you have? Do you still have like an overriding ambition that's not related to kids, or is it pretty much now? I know you're going to do some coaching and consulting. I know you've got a lot of people that are hounding you to do that. So you're capitulating. I think you're finally going to give in and start helping people kind of as a business. But other than that, what's like the big ambition or ambitions that you have now? What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
One of the things that I found, like these principles are for men and women, as you can tell, my son, worked for them too. But women, there's such an underserved market when it comes to having mentoring and whatnot. And so I almost feel like I fell asleep in 2004 and I woke up 20 years later and nothing changed for women. It was like the women are still being asked to take the notes when they go in the meeting room. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'd be doing Rochambeau. Like, who's going to do it? And, we're going to figure this out and it's going to be equal, right? I feel a real need to be able to help women and just mentor them and help them figure out how to start businesses. Just help them. That's the one big thing that is glaring for me that I see that there's the biggest need.
All right, I got one question, and then we're going to talk about how people can find out more about you, find your website, learn how to get a hold of your book. And here's the question. What's the one question that I should have asked you today that I didn't ask?
You ask good questions. I would say the one question or the one area that we did not talk about is the I can mentality and the ability to visualize success, visualize, where I want things to go, the end game. And that's how it worked for me. In sports, I would say, what's the tie between sports and business from the standpoint of being successful about winning? I was preparing for the state championship for tennis, Ken. And the night before, all I did was I had my eyes closed and I visualized placement of the ball. I visualized placement. And then I visualized us being excited when we won. So, and we were playing San Marino. So, San Marino, a lot of money, very competitive, like Corona Del Mar, kind of like that. But so that's what I did. And we went in. It wasn't just because of me, but I just know my little part in this, grain of what was being, done or what was successful. We won. And so I took that with me into business, and I would visualize. So I would be on the plane. I did business in Alabama, and you can imagine a woman in the South in the 90s. And I was called honey a couple times. And I go with the flow. Remember Feminine Fern? I'm like, whatever, just give me your business, right? You can call me what you want. But as I was flying there, I visualized them signing a broker of record letter. I visualized coming out of that huge meeting it was a national thing that made my career. It was a third of my book. I visualized I'm coming out of there with a broker of record letter. And that's what I did the entire way to Alabama. And we got it.
So let me ask you then, how can my listener find out more about you? And again, guys, I want to encourage you. And when I say guys, I mean that literally, men, this is a book you can learn a lot from. As with every guest I have on the show, this book is 100% backed by my personal guarantee. So you can invest in the book, read it, deploy what's in the book. It's not a magical book. It doesn't work if it's on your coffee table or on your nightstand and you don't read and deploy. So you have to read and deploy. But if you invest in the book, you will benefit tremendously. And for any reason at all, if you can't say that, I don't care what it is, even if you're lame and you don't read the book, email me at customerservice@kennewhouse.com and I will reimburse you for the book. Having said that, Theresa, how do we get the book other than Amazon? Tell us about your website and how my listener can find out more about you.
Okay, so if you just go to theresallison.com, and I would say it's Theresa with an E for empowerment. So theresallison.com, and you can go there to learn just more about, the book, the reviews, kind of the heritage stuff. What I didn't mention, Ken, was that my heritage also includes, leave this as a hanger. My heritage also includes Winston Churchill. So it's just, and so I say that because many of the things that I write, I string the pearls in and out of the history of all the heritage. So it makes it interesting. So anyways, theresallison.com.
ThereseAllison.com, and Theresa is not with an A, it's with an E.
With an E, Theresa with an E for empowerment. So. And
then one more time, tell us the name of your book, even though it's going to be all over the webpage and all over the, tell us the name of the book.
It's Playing for Keeps, How a 21st Century Businesswoman Beat the Boys.
Nice. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Anything you want to add before we run?
No, you're great. Thank you, Ken.
No, I had a good time today.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Kin Newhouse team, thanks for listening.